The biggest complaint about university or post-secondary education is that it costs so much and it's crippling. And it cripples the economy, it cripples the students. And so we have so many students who are graduating who are far into debt. So that's why this week's guest, Geary Woolfolk, is an important one for you to listen to. Geary is a computer engineer for Delta Airlines in Travelport, and he's been doing that for 31 years. But then when he and his wife, Deidre, sat down and realized how much it was going to cost for their sons to go to school, they were determined to figure out a plan so that their sons did not have to pay a cent, and they would not either. And so all three of their sons successfully went through university. They came out debt-free, and Geary has put together an entire project. He is the author of Before the Application, How to Become the Ideal College Candidate, and he is also the founder of Woolfolk Works, where he works with students and families, as well as in the community, not only just in Atlanta, but also other groups and organizations. So, without further ado, let's roll it in. This is the Educational Triage Podcast. Welcome. We invite you to come along with us on an exploration of interviews, issues, and other exciting and relevant topics in education, especially alternative education. They say alternative education is a laboratory for mainstream education. Why? Well, join us every week and listen in as Philip Summers
Aloha.
and I, Tony Hunt, jump in feet first to discuss issues that may affect our classes, students, communities, as well as our teaching. Please subscribe if you enjoy and find relevance in what you experience here. And if you haven't left a quick review, please do. We appreciate your candor and insights so we can improve as we move forward. Now, let's see what's on board today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Educational Triage Podcast. This is Tony. And of course, we have the fabulous Philip with us. Hey, Philip.
Aloha. Good to be here.
And this week we have a very special guest, the author of Before the Application, Geary Woolfolk. How are you, Geary?
Hello. I'm doing wonderful. How are you guys?
Oh, we're here ready to learn from you
Good.
because rumor has it that you are going to speak to how to be a successful applicant for colleges. In fact, so successful that we don't have to pay for college. Is that correct?
That is the goal. Absolutely.
Excellent.
That's the target,
Excellent.
huh?
So
Not having to pay for college. Okay.
Yeah, because,
I
well,
like
think
that.
about it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's the debt for student loan debt is, and as we talked about this before, it was at 1.73 trillion.
I feel like plugging my ears and humming. I don't even want to hear it. It's so bad. I know. We've done that. It's like, yeah.
And 2023 was the first year that the debt for student loans went down to about 1.69 trillion. And that was in part, I believe that was in part of student loan forgiveness. But still, it's an astounding amount of money. So,
yeah,
Geary, you worked for Delta and you also worked for Travelport for 31 years. And then what was it that got you going so that you started spending your free time in developing Woolfolk Works, which is a mentoring program, correct me if I'm wrong, mentoring program for students and families to help them have the path in order to do this?
So it started a long time ago in the weed land of, seriously. It started when my kids were young and I started looking at what would it take to put 3 boys through college. And as you said, when it comes to that debt. So as my kids entered middle school, 6th grade, I told them 3 things. When you graduate high school, you are going to college and neither one of us are paying for it. Now, the most important thing I told them from my perspective was, you have 3 months after you graduate to get out of my house. But with respect to college, I realized that in order to make that happen, I had to be intentional. I had to build a plan. So I set out to do that very thing. Began to realize that what it looked like for me and my wife to go to college, completely different. So fast forward to as
Mhm.
each of my kids are graduating, they're getting great opportunities. They're going out for some great scholarship opportunities with interviews. And I look around and I don't see a lot of people from my community like us. But I know there are
Mhm.
people in my community that
Mhm.
are very capable. So what is the
Right.
disconnect? I feel like I had the some keys to some secrets that we were not aware of. So I began to speak in my community. And the more I began to speak, the more that I put together with content, the more I was sharing in such a little amount of time. um, the first thing was people said, you need to write a book. You need to be able to talk about that. So after that took place, I realized that even though I'm sharing knowledge and information, how to go about doing certain things, people just needed to understand. But more importantly, there were a lot of kids out there that did not have the support in their homes to be able to manage and navigate through the different aspects that I was teaching. So Woolfolk Works kind of came out of that. One, parents who were looking for assistance, they had a place to go to purchase that for the kids. But more importantly, it gave me the opportunity to share with those who otherwise wouldn't have that access because they don't have that support at home. So that's kind of birth Woolfolk Works was to make sure that the people who don't have the advantages that come with your private schools and your more affluent neighborhoods and the programs that they have in place, so we can have that same access to information that they have.
Okay, perfect. So how do people find out about this? I mean, do you advertise through, say, the Urban League? What organizations do you go through? Or do you and just go through the schools themselves and contact counselors?
So a lot of it is through contacts that I have generated throughout my different speaking engagements. As soon as I speak somewhere, I hear, I have this other place I would love for you to speak. But there are a lot of fraternities and sororities that I work with in their
Mhm.
programs. And then there are other organizations such as there's 100 Black Men of Atlanta and 100 Black Women of Atlanta, and they bring me in to work with their students. And sometimes it's a simple conversation that I meet somebody in the middle of nowhere, maybe on a ship.
Oh,
um,
at
but
lunch?
but a similar type thing happened with someone, and ended up going up to South Carolina and speaking with some students there. And it's just, you know, I don't really do a lot of advertising um, because I want to make sure I am focusing in on where I feel that I am needed most.
It's kind of like attraction rather than promotion, right?
Yes,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's probably
So
yeah,
word of mouth, so everything's been growing organically, right?
yes.
yeah.
Perfect. And
Well,
then,
I remember when I was going to college. I just want to throw this in. I found out very slowly how many opportunities there were for scholarships. At any kind, like lacrosse players, women basketball players, you name it, there was a scholarship. You could find them all over. So it's really nice to have a kind of manual for some of that stuff.
yeah, yeah, but do you have something like a manual, or is there sort of a warehouse where
Ooh,
people
good
can
question.
tap into? This is something that I planned on asking later on in the conversation. But is there some sort of database, warehouse, or something like that, clearinghouse, where people might be able to uh, access scholarships and the funding?
Yes, there unfortunately are just as many that are looking to take advantage of you as there are those that are legitimate. The one that I
Oh,
found that
okay.
is very comprehensive, very helpful, is called JLV College Counseling. They do a very good job of narrowing
Wow.
down to the particular interests that you have, unique things about you. So they try to tailor it to the
Yeah.
type of scholarships that you're looking for. They help separate out those that are needs based versus not needs based. So that's one website I found that was very useful in my community. And I don't know how much she works nationwide, but I partner with a program called IADW. And what I try to do is, that old saying, stay in your lane. My lane is no matter what scholarship you want to apply for, you have to first be prepared for it. So my job is to make sure that students are prepared for applying for colleges and
Yeah.
scholarships. For my personal experience with my kids and myself, we were able to obtain the major scholarships through the schools themselves. So we didn't have to spend as much
Right.
time on the individual independent scholarships. But I have worked with a
Mm.
lot of students, and the JLV is a very good one. And just one thing about scholarships, that while we're talking about this, students don't understand that if you can manage to be successful at 5% of the scholarships that you apply for, you are being super successful. So you have to think quantity as much as you think quality. You may have to apply for 100 to get 5, and that's okay. But students want to just take the easy route and do this, the quickest and simplest ones. Well, everybody is going after those. You also have to find the ones that might require a little bit more effort, and the ones that are more
Right.
tailored towards you as an individual. So there are definitely opportunities out there, and things that people don't realize. Once you're in college, colleges offer scholarships. Sometimes you can work with the department head
Yeah.
and go to them and say, what scholarships you have, as you show your interest and you get involved and you're proving yourself. And there are independent scholarships out there for people in college as well, because people are starting to want to make sure they get a return on that investment, not necessarily money back, but that the students are being successful. And it's hard to really
Right.
gauge that with the student before they go to college. But once they are there, they've established themselves, they have the confidence in what they're doing, then people, especially companies, are wanting to invest in students that are truly on that pathway to what it is that they're looking to do.
Yeah. Do you
So
also investigate like internships or toward trades or vocations?
Right. Ask that question once again.
Do you also investigate like vocational trades and ways to get those funded internships, things like that? Or is it strictly just college?
Right. I'm focusing mostly on just college. While I have
Okay. Yeah.
mentored students in that area, my specialty
Yeah.
is within the college realm, college and trade school and that sort of thing.
are they
Yeah.
really that different?
No,
Okay.
they're really
Yeah.
not. Um,
No. Yeah.
Except you don't have to pass you don't have to have a high score on the ACT or the SAT
no, you do not.
for the trade schools.
For the trade schools,
Right.
what people don't realize though is there are trade schools. All schools want success. They want to
Right.
market
Mhm.
themselves as being successful. So even in trade schools, if they have a dynamic student, not necessarily the student that had the 3.9, but if they have that
Mhm.
dynamic student, and the reason a school wants to invest in you, again, is for success, but how do they get any sense of confidence that you may have that? And that's when you demonstrate beforehand that you're not just talk. You actually can demonstrate that I am serious about this. I have spent and invested my time into really going forward in this endeavor. And when they see this, trade schools are even willing to work with you. It may not always be a published scholarship, but conversations can be had that can sometimes lead to opportunities. A lot of times when you have these conversations and they are so invested in who you are, they may know of opportunities that they can present to you.
The one thing I noticed that you didn't talk about in the book was the FAFSA, the
Actually, I
financial.
do. I
I
have a
couldn't.
section. I have a
I couldn't
section in the
find it.
book that talks about
Okay.
FOPSA and the CSS profile.
Okay.
It
Ooh.
talks about it in there. It talks about the importance of it, the necessity of
Yeah.
it to be able to get scholarship,
Perfect.
um,
Okay.
Get it
and the
early.
difference between FOSFA and CSS profile, how CSS profile is a lot more invasive. And then I'll talk about the importance of the timing.
Mm.
And the reason that's important is I had one young lady I
Yeah.
worked with for a few years. She had a dream school, University of Virginia. She
Mhm.
did almost everything right. She got accepted into her dream school. Due to circumstances out of her control, her FAFSA was not filled out in time. So therefore, she was not able to get the amount of aid that she could have received because of her situation at home. And she missed out on going to her dream school.
Oh,
Timing is everything. Timing, you
right.
have to, and that's why I stress that in the book to the students and to the parents.
It's got to be done in October because that's when they open it up.
That's when they open it up, and every school has their own deadline. Don't
Mhm.
wait, get it done.
Right.
It's as simple as
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Get it done right away.
Yeah.
And that's
So
why it's good to know early on your target schools, because you may be targeting a school that, because they're needs based, they want to go to the CSS profile, which again is a lot more invasive, but it wants to ensure that if I'm going to be giving out money strictly on a needs basis, that you truly do have this need, not just some parents can get very creative in hiding funds and
Mhm.
getting taken advantage of opportunities that really should be going to
Mm.
students that truly don't have the funds and support in their household.
Yeah.
Definitely. What was the biggest lesson that you learned as you progressed along? Because you said that you and Deidre started when the kids were in middle school. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
When they were in middle school and you noticed how expensive it was going to be. And so you started planning and you were very intentional about it. And then as you progressed through the steps with your first son, and by the time that you finished with your last son, and I'm sure that you're still figuring some things out as well, or maybe learning that
Always learning.
there are always these little epiphanies that pop up because things change. What what was it that surprised you the most, or that you found to be one of the greatest obstacles that you had to overcome in order to get this going?
So, and when you first started, you asked what was the biggest lesson learned.
Right.
Um, that I was wrong. When I set out with my oldest, 4 years between my oldest and my second,
Mm.
I thought I knew and understood. I did well in high school and got some good opportunities. My wife did well in high school. And I'm like, I know what it takes. And so I set out to kind of develop a plan that made the most sense to me.
Hmm.
And in doing so, I realized, as I said earlier, what it took for us to get opportunities is not the same for these kids today.
Yeah.
Because I placed enough emphasis in the right areas, we got lucky. And not say lucky, fortunate that it worked out for the oldest. Um, so the thing that I would like to really emphasize for parents out there, especially those who went to college, it's not the same. If you went to college 20, 30 years ago, it's not the same. What they're looking for is not the
Mhm.
same. And so you need to understand that if you want to plan, you need to properly plan. And then what I learned also with my own child is no matter how much I want to plan and I build out a plan, if I don't get them invested into the plan, then it's going to go by the wayside. So it took me a while to figure that out with my oldest to make sure that he took ownership and accountability. And it wasn't dad and mom with ownership and accountability trying to push him along. And
How
that was
difficult
How
did
early was that? Yeah. At what age was that when you kind of start to plan for that to
so
meet a
with the
target?
oldest, we didn't figure it out until junior year.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And
Oh,
yeah, so that
yeah.
again,
Okay.
lessons learned.
Yeah.
So thankfully, 4 years in
Yeah.
between,
Junior.
with my
Yeah.
next child, we started it as he entered high school. It was part of the conversation, and it was a kind of a
Okay.
demonstration of okay, when you were born, you were carried. When you were beginning to walk, you kind of walked behind, and I dragged you along. Now that you've gone through middle school, we walk side by side. Now it's time for you to walk up front. I still got my hand on my shoulder. I'm going to be helping. I'm going to be guiding. But this is now your walk. So I had to get him to understand that
Yeah.
the decisions he made, the actions he took, everything he does from this point on affects his future, not mine. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So I began to show them, it's hard to have that concept of, I'm going to be out in the world paying for stuff on my own. What does that mean? So I was like able to break it down to show them, what is it you want in life? Let's paint a picture of what that looks like. Now, what do you think it takes to achieve and to attain these things? And mommy and daddy won't be doing this. You'll have to be doing this. And let's kind of show you what this looks like. And when they began to understand, okay, wait a minute, I'd rather not be the one asking, would you like fries with that, and not having the ability to support my family. So what is going to
Hmm.
be my best role of success to get there? And no matter what it was going to be, whether it was a trade school, college, entrepreneurship, that education was a key principle of that. And once they began
Yeah.
to understand this and envision their own future and what it takes to get there, I just stepped back and let them run with it. I mean, it's once that click happened, that light bulb went off, then they began to
Yeah.
understand and see a future.
How
And
difficult is it to get the kids to have agency and realize that they have the agency to do all this? How do you,
Depends on the kid.
well,
believe
I
it or
think,
not, I've had talks where I've gotten the light bulb to go off with students in 10, 15 minutes.
Well,
And
really,
you're
it's
hired.
facing reality. It's truly facing reality
Yeah.
of
I
getting,
think your
you
talk
start off,
is new.
let's go
Yeah.
ahead.
I'm sorry. The talk that you gave your son was, I don't think many parents give that.
Yeah.
Here's kind of how it works, kid. In
Yeah.
case you had any, doubts about it, I can tell you. Yeah. Because
I mean,
I
I
wasn't
drove them
given that
around the
talk.
city and said, which of these places would you like to live? And
Wow.
and when I said, okay, well, if you limit yourself, here's where you live. If that's what you
Right.
choose to do, I have no problem with that. I want you to be happy. It's what you want, not what I want for you. But when I'm speaking with some kids and they just, what does this old man have to say that's really going to matter to me? So I start off with them asking, okay, how many of you all are looking forward to graduating and getting out of your parents' house? Of course, every high school student is like, I can't wait to do that. And
Right.
then I
Right.
basically, and the short version is, when you're, let's say, 28, how many of you all's parents are going to be continuing to pay your bills for you? How many of you all's parents are going to say, you stay at home, I'll go to your job and work for you, and you take the paycheck? Okay. How exactly
Mm.
is it then that you plan on ensuring that you're able to have whatever it is that you're looking for? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about what that looks like? Have you figured out what it means to be able to secure a job? And so I just spoke at Clark
Yeah.
College a couple of weeks ago and got them to realize when you go graduate middle school, there's a next. It's high school. You know what that is. When you graduate high school, you decide at college where's your next. Guess what? You can go to any college you wanted to, but if you want to
Mm.
go to college, there's pretty much a place for you to go. But when you graduate college, there's no guarantee that there's a job sitting out there for you. You're going to be competing against a lot of other people. So that's why in the program that we're in as freshmen, they're building you up to be able to pretty much what I'm doing for high school students on what does it mean to have a good resume? What does it mean to network? What does it mean to build your brand? And so I got them to realize, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, everything up to this point, I just had to go to my next. Well, my next is no longer guaranteed. So when you get students to begin to understand that you will be competing and it's not going to be handed to you, and you have to figure out how to put yourself at a competitive edge, they begin to listen and they begin to realize if you don't do this, then you may end up in your parents' house for the next 10 years while you figure it out. Oh, wait a minute. I don't want that. Okay, let me listen to what you have to say. Now, of course, I add a lot more to it than what I just stated here, but getting students to realize that they have to take agency for themselves and for their own future. And if you go into class and the only thing you care about is getting a grade, then I ask you this question: how many companies are going to pay you for your knowledge? No one. because they can go look up anything you have in your head. They are not going to pay you for that. They're going to pay you for your ability to do critical thinking, your ability to apply that knowledge. If you're not learning that in school, if you're just memorizing and regurgitating, you're not going to be set up to be successful in the workforce. And so they begin to realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm approaching school in the wrong way. I'm just trying to get through and get a degree or get a certificate versus I need to be building my foundation so that I have a trade that I can then go apply and have a successful career.
How what is how often are parents the ones that you have to convince that it's the student's responsibility and that it's the student's path?
That is one of my hardest conversations. And as you could imagine, and I really hate to
Great.
generalize,
That's
but
a good
it's
one.
just
Yeah.
reality. I have to have conversations with my moms. Moms, you want to ensure that your little cubs are never hurt, are never in trouble, never fail. And in doing so, you're keeping them from learning by failing, by making mistakes, by going through the tough
Yeah.
times. So the hardest part I have is first dealing with the moms and making sure they understand that if you do the work for your student now, you're going to be doing the work for them when they graduate high school because they're not going to be able to
Right.
do it for themselves and they're not going to be successful when they go to college. So it is
Yeah.
not an easy thing.
Does it ever soak through?
Absolutely.
About
Absolutely.
how
I get it to soak through by, I have a stat that I can show that talks about college success.
Mhm.
40% is the graduation rate, average graduation rate in 4-year college in 4 years, 60% over 6 years. And when you go to communities that are less affluent, the rate goes way down from there. And then the question is, why is it that most students are unsuccessful when they go to college? There are a few different reasons, but the number one reason is a lack of discipline. And that lack of discipline
Yeah.
comes from, and parents, when they hear discipline, they think, oh, chastise my child. No, there's a lot of things that go into discipline, but you can't be disciplined as an individual if the parent is continuously controlling your discipline. If they're telling you you must go do this and you must go do
Yeah.
this without explaining the why behind it, without ensuring that they understand that it's important for them to do this and them to develop this. If you don't have that discipline, it's going to be very difficult to be successful at the next level unless you're just a natural
It's
genius.
also it's also important to note that it's been proven by so many different models that failure is part of learning. You don't just
Absolutely.
do it, master it, move on. You have to fail in order to get to that mastery level. Yeah.
It's a true statement. And one of the examples I give is your kid was little, they would do something, you tell them to stop doing it. You could tell them how many times, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let them do it and get hurt. They learn their lesson. They don't do it again.
Mhm.
Now, you can't do that with anything that's dangerous. But when my
Yeah.
son was jumping off the
Climb
back of the
ladders.
sofa and I told him twice to stop and he didn't, I won't keep going. And once he busted his head on the carpet and came around crying, I looked at him and said, what did you think was going to happen? Didn't I tell you that was going to happen? Are you going to do that again? Lesson over. So I encourage failure, absolutely, and I have to get parents to see and understand that. That is one of the biggest
Yeah.
obstacles I have with parents, especially my mothers.
See, I always use the example of when we all first learned how to walk. We all didn't just stand up and just start jogging along. We had to fall forward. I mean, we had to keep falling and picking ourselves back up. First of all, that's how we build our confidence and we build our strength because you have to learn how to balance yourself too. But if mom and dad are constantly picking you up and rushing over every time that you do it, you start getting this learned helplessness. And so they're always going to be there. And you can't have that. You have to have some form of independence into the
I like that one. I'm working on an update for my book. I might steal that one from you.
Well, I saw my neighbors had a baby, and he started to walk, and I watched him, and he just kind of went down, and it wasn't like a catastrophic kind of fall, but he just went down like kids will do when they try to stand up. And he was starting to pick himself up, and both the parents rushed in and grabbed him to hold him. And I bit my tongue because I just wanted to say, let him do it on his own. He's not in any kind of danger. But that's just the way that they are. And I keep seeing more and more of this kind of coddling that's so detrimental to their growth. And I'm just wondering whether or not that might have an impact on just students' abilities to progress and take the agency that they need in order to make that move. The next thing I was going to ask you, you talk about in the book, you talk about building the resume, and you've referred to it as students progress from ninth grade, because you have the students you had your boys start working probably just before they went into the ninth grade. You probably went through and kind of gave them a bit of a roadmap, or how did that work? And then did you encourage them to have a job during the summer or during the school year at any time? Or how does all that pan out? What's the resume?
So my kids, I'm trying to think. I think one of my kids may have had one part-time job while they were in school.
Okay.
I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer here. From the way we did it was, your job is building your content for your college application. So we put them into programs over the summer. And these programs serve two purposes. One, to build that college content. The other thing, and again, the focus is when you can see your future, when you can see what it is that you want to do, maybe not the exact thing, but some kind of field or a couple of fields. It's another reason why kids are successful when they go to college is because they're going in having no idea what they really want to major in, so they're floundering. So by going and doing these different programs, these different summer programs, they can get a taste of what it's like to be in that discipline. And they can begin to say, you know what, maybe not. So my youngest two sons both said, I want to do computer science. So I put them into this great computer science camp that was on Saturdays during the second part of the school year, and then over the summer. One of them realized, that's not what I want to do. The youngest one was like, oh, yes, I love this. So it helped them to be focused. And when they fill out the application, it demonstrated what they were actually serious about. Mm-hmm. So I chose to not do the work path because I wanted them to be focusing on summer programs and during the school year being a part of different extracurricular activities to, again, focus on certain things, but also build that leadership that was going to be needed for their resume, to build that community service that colleges absolutely look for. And I have parents ask, why do colleges care about community service? My theory, they want to bring students in that not only are going to be successful, but believe in giving back. Because when they graduate as alumni, they want them giving back. That's my own theory on it. But it goes to show that they're building a community in a college, and they want to make sure that you fit well into a community, which means you're just as much about giving as receiving. And so community service helps to show that. So again,
an exclusive community. Yeah.
And the liberal arts are about building a well-rounded person. So if they're going to go to a liberal arts college or study at something of that ilk, the college wants to make sure that they're a good reflection on them.
Absolutely.
And a well-rounded person cares about the community that they're living in, and they want to be involved in some way or another that they're just not taking.
And so I wanted my kids to not only be able to list that they participated in something,
Mhm.
but that they had an impact on something. So I was like, let's go beyond. Let's just sign up for a clothing drive or whatever the case may be, and let's actually go to the community. Let's be that difference. Let's be that impact. Let's figure out a need and meet that need. And that demonstrates even more. That puts your leadership with your community service and your volunteer work. That demonstrates that you are willing to go to beyond just doing enough and actually make a difference. So these were the things that we were intentional about when we were growing up. And the question of, well, how did I get my kids to buy off on it? I showed them, here's what in the eighth grade, well, between eighth grade and ninth grade, here's what a college application looks like. Here are the things you're going to have to fill out. Here are the things that they care about. You can't just wait until you
Nice.
become a senior and start doing these things, because they're going to look at it and say, wait a minute, you graduated in 2024 and you did all these things in 2023. You did this just for a college application. Oh, wait a minute, you started in 2020, 2021. Oh, this is really who you are. So that's why, getting them to see this, I cannot say they fully understood it as
Mm.
far as the true value, but they believed it because they saw it.
Mhm. It kind of gave them a
Yeah.
roadmap too of what
Yeah,
they needed to do.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, with the
so
manual.
what you talk about the importance of reading. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Reading is the absolute basis of all learning, and that, not just in school, but in life. I was fortunate enough to participate in a mentoring program when I was a manager looking to grow my career with a group called ITSMF. It's the IT Senior Management Forum. And I learned there that the average CEO, CIO, C-suite individual reads on average 12 to 15 books a year. And I began to realize that what's happening is it's not just about the knowledge content that they're gaining, it's the exposure to the possibilities that are out there. But then when I started to look backwards and I started to look at many of the struggles I had and many of the struggles that other people have had, it comes down to reading comprehension. I was a math whiz, literally. I mean, on the SAT, I aced it. I loved math, but I would struggle with certain problems. Yeah, word problems. My reading comprehension was, I don't even know how a negative enough word to describe it. And granted,
Hey,
I had ADD,
look,
but that was no excuse. I just could not read for comprehension. So my ability to understand what was being asked of me would become a struggle. And if you don't understand that, then before the content even matters, you're already at a disadvantage. And reading also develops your writing skills, no matter how good you are at something. And it's not just your writing skills, your writing and speaking skills. No matter how good you are at something, if you cannot articulate that to the people that matter, the person who can do that, even if they're not as talented as you, will get opportunities over you. And then finally, when you look at a lot of our standardized tests that really matter, oftentimes because you're in a time situation, the ability to read quickly for comprehension is oftentimes the difference between um, your dream score and your average score for that individual. So reading is absolutely the baseline of everything. And if you have someone that can fall in love with reading, then it is going to just, it's, I call it the gateway drug for education. And it really is, because you fall in love with reading, you fall in love with learning. um, and, it, and
Definitely.
and I also emphasize, when the kid is young, I don't care what they read. I mean, as long as it's age appropriate. Don't get so bogged down in reading these official books for not, just let them read. Find anything that is of interest to them and let them read, let them read, let them read. And all you have to do as a parent is just ask them, hey, what you reading? Tell me what's going on. Why do you think that is? And parents don't understand this. Their kids are eager to be able to be the one with the knowledge to share with you. Wait a minute, you're relying on me? I'm the one with the information and I get to teach you? Kids love it. They absolutely love it.
So
Mhm.
let's say that a parent has an 11th grader or a sophomore, or maybe, yeah, 11th grader, because we're getting close to the end of that school year. What's the best course of action that they might have in order to start working with their student in order to prepare them for the onslaught of applications and everything else? Because they, to be honest, if sometimes parents are just overwhelmed, and this, I believe, is probably pretty overwhelming for them when they start thinking about the application process and the student financing process and everything else, and they have to go out and make visitations if possible. So what would you tell somebody who's nearing the end of the junior year or maybe in the sophomore year, because they're starting a little bit later?
Yeah,
Can they still find success?
absolutely. Now, it's all about finding your opportunity. And granted,
Hmm.
when you start later, depending on what you've done up to that point, you may not have as many opportunities, but opportunities are still there. And sometimes you can have an advantage over those who have maybe had more success on paper if you present yourself in a fashion that's marketing yourself better than they do. The biggest downfall that people run into is not understanding that it's overwhelming. It's like having a part-time job if you're going to do it and do it right. Timing is everything. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Start planning now and acting in the summer. In the summer, you absolutely want to knock out, because you have these common apps now. You want to knock out getting the basic information out there. You want to knock out before school ends, getting those transcripts, put out there from your guidance counselors, because they're going to be super busy when
Yeah.
school starts back up. But more importantly, I have talked to so many college admissions officers, but more importantly, I've talked to more scholarship committee um, members. The number one thing that prevents students from opportunities when the playing field is level is the essay. Too many students take this for granted. Don't do that. It has significance, it has importance, especially when we're talking about money. I have seen these scholarship committee individuals. University of Georgia here, my son got their top scholarship, and now they ask the alumni to come back and of the scholarship program and help them go through the applications. And he was like, Dad, because he helped me with writing the book as far as a lot of the editing stuff. And he was like, you have nailed it. It is the absolute thing that is keeping these kids. They all have stellar applications, but they're missing it with the essay. So
Right.
spend time on that essay. Be focused on that
Is it
essay.
What are the
is it
tips that you
content
have for the
and
essay?
construction? Yeah.
It's
What are those tips?
So you have two major components, of course. A well-written essay.
Okay.
If it's not well written, I don't care
Yeah.
what it says, they're going to toss you to the side. If you don't invest enough time to make sure it is error-free, grammar without grammar mistakes, if you don't do that, you've just written yourself off. And not just without error, but well formatted, well told. And so how you tell the story is just as important as what you say. So you want to make sure that as you're telling it, you figure out a way to connect and grab someone's attention. So you find your niche on how do I want to tell my story, and how do I want to capture them and bring them in. And then what you say is also important, because I guess it's really the three parts: how you telling a story, making sure it's error free, and then your content. Do not regurgitate what is on your college application. They don't want to know that. There are some scholarship essays they may specifically ask you for something that you can maybe expound on that was in your application, but for the most part, they are not looking for that. They're looking for a glimpse into who you are. And so, being intentional about finding your story, about finding your niche, about marketing yourself, these are the type things that help you to stand out. And when the playing field again is level, can set you apart. And again, if it's on the negative side, it will absolutely eliminate you from opportunities, especially the money.
Mm.
What I've discovered, and maybe you can correct me on this, but I've always told my students, do not give me the answers that you think I want in this essay. Do not write the essay as though you are going to please me, because I will be displeased. I need to hear from you,
Exactly.
not what you think I want. But there are so many other teachers who are quite the opposite. You need to write this paper and it needs to be X, Y, and Z. And so, how do we break that? Because students are so programmed, because it's all about compliance, right?
Yes.
And so now they're asking them not to comply necessarily, to use some of the skills that they have, but now to think a little bit more outside the box.
Yeah. It's so a key. It's a lot of times it's about, I'll ask students questions such as, um, what difference do you want to make in the world? As far as just generating thoughts about what they might want to write about.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to make a difference in people's lives? Those type questions are twofold, by the way. I ask those same questions to help figure out what it is that you might want to do in life, what career you might want to have. But it also serves for thinking about that essay. So the other mistake, and I'm sorry, I just thought about this. The other mistake is there are students that have sob stories. So
Mm-hmm.
they write sob stories. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people out there writing sob stories, and the reader eventually just says, enough is enough. No, the sob story is not going to get you through here. I
They
strongly
aren't they
encourage students not to simply write a sob story. Now, if you want to set up a story by talking about some things and then parlay that into how you then went out and made a difference for somebody else, how you took that and just, if it's a foundation, mention it, but don't make that the
Mm.
basis of your story.
shouldn't it be
Yeah,
a
I hear
victory
you.
over the struggle?
Absolutely.
Because nobody wants to hear about how down you feel, because nobody wants that. But because that means that you're going to be down there. And who wants to have somebody who's going to play the victim while they're there? They want somebody who is ready to overcome obstacles, because wouldn't that be the primary candidate that they're looking for?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Especially after cut class. Especially at that junior year or sophomore year where they give you that atrociously hard class in your major.
So, in alternative programs, we have students who may not have a lot of the family supports. So,
Mm,
what are
yeah.
things that alternative programs and schools do? What are some ideas or structures that they can put in place, as insofar as working with their students to empower them so that they are better prepared, that they don't have to struggle quite as much, or if they do struggle, that there is a way for them to come out of this victorious in one way or another?
So a few things. I talked earlier about when you can see and envision a future. Basically, what
Mhm.
I'm talking about is hope and belief. When you don't have hope for your future, when you don't believe that you're capable of doing something, you can put all the programs in place that you want. You can speak as many words as you want. They're not going to believe you. It's not real to them. So being able to see for themselves, and to have hope is, I think, one of the most um, positive things you can do. And I guess I use the word positive because we need to speak positivity into these kids. Many times in the environment that they're in, they're being spoken down to. They're being told what they can't do. And I know for a fact, oftentimes, even with students that come from good households, um, oftentimes a student has to hear that someone believes in them before they will believe in themselves. And so I even think about myself when I first started working and I was married, and I'm like, how is this going to work? And I got to support my wife while she's in school and just floundering. And I had a guy at my church who was about 10 years older. And he was like, "Are you serious?" He was like, "Gary, I've watched you grow up and I know everything about you. I'm not worried about you in the least. You got this big time." And that totally changed my outlook. I've done the same for other students. And one young lady, pay it forward, in my church, stayed in trouble. Absolutely stayed in trouble. Now, I don't recommend this part, but I realized that her grades were slipping because her conduct was so bad. She was just constantly talking and getting into trouble that way. So in the seventh grade, I told her, if you don't get one conduct grade less than a B, I give you $50. Now, this was 30 years ago, and I didn't have a lot of money, and 50 was a lot to me, and it was a whole lot to her. She came back, showed me her report card. While she showed me there was all A's in conduct, I saw that her grades were all A's and B's, which had not happened before. And when I focus on that, and I focus on the fact that you keep saying you're not smart, but this here proves that you are smart and you are capable, and all these things that people telling you you can't do, I'm telling you you can do. And when I tell you her home situation was awful, when you have a sibling to die and the parent is in jail for it, and it was very tough, very bad, lots of illegal things that were taking place. And this young lady graduated college and got her master's degree, all because she realized she can. So all that to say, hope, belief is the first thing that I would say. And the next thing that I
Wow.
think goes with that is peer pressure. Peer pressure works in two ways. That old saying, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." When you surround yourself with people who are positive and as focused as you are on what you're going after, it drags you along. So, with that, there was another young man at high school with my son that was all over the place because dad is gone, mom was literally crazy, and he was going between his mom's house and his grandmother's house. And he was a smart kid, but just very unfocused. I made sure that my son and my, um, I don't know what you call him, my wife's second cousin son, who were very focused, took this young man in. He went from barely doing well in the ninth grade to graduating top 25 and going to Harvard. And it was all because he surrounded himself, instead of with the people who were not focused on what they were doing, he got in with the crowd that they competed with each other and encouraged each other to do well. So that peer pressure means a lot. So sometimes it's about getting this other students to corral in some students and bring them along with them. Um, and it's about being intentional about it. And I say use the community. I mean, it takes a village is a reality, and sometimes you have to take the parents who are doing and have figured it out to grab a couple of kids with them as they go along and encourage them as well. My boys knew you do something not quite right, you're going to get a punch in the chest from dad. Was it hard? No, but it got their attention. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. Little, playful punch in the chest. Had a young kid come up to me and say, I want to be one of the Woolfolk boys. I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, I wish I had somebody that would punch me in the chest when I do something stupid. He
We
became
all
one
need
of the
that.
That's so
Woolfolk boys.
sad, though.
Now, granted, I almost got in trouble. Needless to say, I was up at the school a lot. He was walking down the hallway. I said, hey, didn't you have an assignment that was due? Yeah. Did you turn it in? No. Why didn't you? Because I didn't feel, boom. He looked at me, walked up and hugged me, said, I'm sorry, Mr. Woolfolk. I'll get it. I won't let it happen again. I said, no, you're going to get this one done, but I won't get any credit. I don't care. Community makes a difference. We have to try to get the other people to realize it's not just about self or your own child. A rising tide raises all ships. As
And
long as
discipline.
people in your community are doing well, it's going to make it better for you as an individual.
And having the discipline and creating that the discipline to do things and get things done and serve as a model for that, I think speaks volumes on your part for all
Being
of these
intentional.
improvements.
That's what it's called,
Yeah,
being intentional.
exactly.
Yeah,
So we're
absolutely.
out of time, but this is absolutely amazing. I think the work you're doing is amazing. And I'm going to put Woolfolk Works down below for the link. So if anybody wants to contact you, they can do that, correct?
Reach out to me.
Okay. And your book is on Amazon. It's also on Goodreads. And it's available, and it's called Before the Application, How to Become the Ideal College Applicant. And I just want to say thank you so much. Who knew that an embarkation day lunch would lead to this? So I want to thank you, Geary.
Thank you. Again, for anybody that wants to reach out, for anybody that wants to do the book, I'll say first and foremost, I do this out of love and out of a passion. I think I explained this to you, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
I have not made one red cent off of my book. I use it to give scholarships. I use it to invest back into the community, give books out to the community. I do this because it's a passion of mine. So if anybody thinks I'm saying whatever I have to say because I'm looking to make money, it's far from the truth.
I think it's I think that there is just so much goodness that comes out of this book, because the book it's so dense with the information, and you can just go through it, and it's almost a step by step. And I have parents right now who are ordering it, parents that I know, because I told them, I said, this is something that you really need to take a look at. And
if you have some people that just truly cannot afford the book, I'll send them one. But I'm just saying, maybe there's somebody that's listening and they just truly can't afford it.
Yeah. I'll buy one.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Geary.
And we will see everybody next week for another episode. So thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Tony. Aloha.
Say, keep your feet on the ground while you reach for the stars. Adios.